is worthy to be taken away. Lucian also banned as well, which is actually quite curious to me, as Kalista does go away.
Yeah, I think taking away Kalista is very smart here, especially when you consider the Draven and Lucian into it. But this also does make Zeri very strong here, and we'll probably have to see a Yuumi ban now from T1. There it is. So pretty much self-explanatory starts here. The Gwen also being taken away from Zeus so that Dove can have a little bit more safety and stability in that lane. Now we once again Prince picking up this Sivir, which has been such a big power pick for him since its rise to popularity on 12-13.
Yeah, so Sivir's going to be locked in, but there's Sylas left available. There's the Azir if Faker wants to go there as well. Of course, picking Azir into a potential Sylas is definitely dangerous, but still, a lot of big picks now up for T1 to take their choice of.
I think Zeri is going to be another one that, as Guma here, you feel priced into picking. But picking the Azir into the Sylas, risky pick. It's also closer's Sylas, and he has had some phenomenal performances on that champion. Don't like picking the Azir just here.
Yeah, I think Lulu Zeri would be fine. Right?
Yeah, Lulu Zeri is totally fine. I think you don't necessarily need to lock Lulu away, but T1 making a statement here, putting Faker on his Azir. Now, it is Faker, one of the most storied Azir players of all time, if not the most storied Azir player of all time. And you put him in this position, you have some power in lane, and it's a sustained nerfs in lane that actually makes Sylas a little bit weaker, actually in the laning phase here against Azir. You could trade out more aggressively, harass the Sylas better with some of the changes that we did have to the sustained runes. So perhaps an argument to be made there, but Closer says he just wants to play the Ahri again.
So, Vi Ahri, very scary duo.
Very LIIV Sandbox.
Very, very LIIV Sandbox. That's what I was going to say next. And it's not the Sylas. The Sylas is sort of slipping down the rung just a little bit, and he doesn't have a great time in lane. 12-14, largely more about lane. And it kind of makes some sense here, as the very obvious Zeri pick will be locked in. The Lulu Zeri has been very powerful, and now T1 actually have their opportunity to ban away things for Kayle. I actually am very interested as to why he didn't lock away his Renata that he's been so good at. But didn't want to do it here.
Well, I think that the Ahri is so strong with pick-based junglers, so they wanted to do that, and they're not as worried about the Renata here in this case. Now, by the way, we did have to shout out the Ornn ban. It is Dove's best champion. He is undefeated on this champion. He is 7-0 on it, and so you just do not want to be facing that one. That one was definitely going away no matter what in the second phase. But yeah, I think LIIV Sandbox have a tightly packed amount of power in these three champions, and losing the Renata for this, if they even do, I think doesn't feel so bad here when you consider the power it has in the mid-game in general elsewise.
Yeah, the Ornn ban is actually kind of curious, just because I thought that they might just go for the Tahm Kench Renata that we've seen so many times if there isn't a support locked in. The Leona will be what they decide to take away, and the read that I'm kind of getting is that T1 understand that LIIV Sandbox want Kayle on a engaged support of some kind. They're going to take away a decent one here. Leona has been jumping up in priority recently.
Yeah, Rakan still available, the Nautilus still available, and it's just more for that kind of dive in and engage. Taking away Owner's Xin Zhao, I think, is very smart, works extremely well with the Lulu, and we've seen the power of Owner on this pick. He was playing it before everybody else, and it's still kind of a niche jungle pick here in the LCK, but he has been by far the best player of it. The Sejuani will be the choice here, and with no Trundle to speak of here in this draft, there's just no real worry for this. It's a pretty safe blind pick. The Gnar becomes so obvious here, though, for LIIV Sandbox, and I'm really wondering what this jungle pick is going to be here for T1, because it's going to really link things together, as Lee Sin is still up, and it's definitely a power pick that we could see come through. There's the Nautilus, and Gragas, it's not a powerful pick into this matchup, but it is one that is very difficult to lose, and I think that's kind of the MO here for Dove, is just sit back, have some extra engage, body slam plus charm plus Vi plus Sivir damage is a good combination for LIIV Sandbox style gameplay.
Well, speaking of LIIV Sandbox style, they are going to go for the engaged support like we were talking about. The Nautilus is going to be locked in. Does have obvious advantages into the Zeri as well with targeted CC that is very difficult to avoid. So certainly a good call there. Keria going to think about Owner's pickup, and you'd assume that it's going to be the Lee Sin, but Pantheon has certainly been doing the rounds. And it will be locked in, yeah.
A Pantheon on this patch has, I mean, I know I do apologize for us telling everyone the patch notes repeatedly, because I know a lot of you guys watch other regions, but not everybody does. But Pantheon does more damage to jungle camps on this patch, so it's a significant buff he's received. Allows him to clear faster, makes him relevant in the jungle again. His ultimate will allow him to be a semi-global threat in these lanes where T1 are going to be looking for prio nonstop. They have the Zeri Lulu, so it's not just Sivir wins by default down there. You have Azir into Ahri. You have Pantheon who can keep up with Vi dives and will be able to match those rotations, so it makes it very difficult to actually crush the Zeri Lulu lane, even if resources are given down there. And there's just global presence here for an insanely smart jungler in Owner who is going to be able to utilize that power very well post-6, and just guaranteed CC and lockdown is also going to be very valuable going into these mid-game fights.
Yeah, no, exactly. POG stands for Prince of the Game, by the way. I never knew that. I actually thought it was Player of the Game. So pretty cool that he has...
Yeah, today I learned.
Yeah, the entire title dedicated to him, and I'm glad that the educational fan signs are coming out. That is a very interesting drawing.
Yeah, it's a whirlwind of T1 coming at him.
Absolutely amazing. It's like the Tasmanian Devil from Looney Tunes.
She hasn't really made a statement of which side she's on. She just wants a really good game.
Yeah. I actually understood that because the gem part, yeah.
Yeah, Clear Gem literally translates to honey fun, but it's usually just a term that means something that's really awesome or really fun, really enjoyable.
Yeah, I remember Honey Gem. I was taught at the LCK for one random line in a show that we did a couple of years ago.
It's one of those things that's difficult to translate, but once you hear it once, you just, even if you don't speak Korean, like if you're a foreign fan watching at home, you kind of don't forget because honey fun sounds so unusual in,
yeah.
in English. So, yep, lots of fans here tonight for this really critical matchup, match of the week. And these
one
two drafts,
of many,
yeah, these two drafts colliding in such a way that I think it is going to be a very, I don't think either team wins the draft harder by any means. If we're talking about which teams are feeling more comfortable, I definitely feel that the answer is LIIV Sandbox. They have a draft that is exactly what they want, is hard aggression, engage, damage spiking around early, mid, and Gragas for Dove on the top side. Very difficult for him to lose the game, fall behind, beat Dove. He actually has a lot of counters there set up. So in terms of who got what they are famous for, I give the edge to LIIV Sandbox here. However, I think on this sustained patch with the Lulu Zeri, yeah, Guma is going to be able to get through the early game fairly easily. Faker's on Azir, so as long as he positions well against the Ahri, there's not a lot of kill pressure there. And with the buffs to Drake's, even though arguably LIIV Sandbox is in buff to Drake's health and their individual values, I think that LIIV Sandbox's comp, even though it's very strong at fighting, won't necessarily get that value early on because it's hard to commit, and T1 could just find value elsewhere.
Yeah, and there has been a little bit of a rune issue. We are going to probably just remake the game, get straight back into it. So it's been a while since we've had the old rune bug.
Yeah,
welcome back, I guess.
We've had those pauses at the beginning of the game to make sure that it doesn't happen anymore, and it actually hasn't happened since we implemented that until today, but hey, the system is working, Atlas.
Exactly, exactly. I do want to talk about the comps again just a little bit, just because the scaling question that we always have with these Sivir versus Zeri drafts, tried to say both of the 80 carries at the same time, is often about, like, which one of these is going to be the better late game carry. And it's so conditional, especially for both of these champions. It's very, very interesting to think about how it's going to go, because it's all about whether LIIV Sandbox can actually get the 5v5s that they're looking for with the amount of ricochet value that you can get if your opponent is grouped up.
Yeah.
But T1 have a lot of opportunities to scatter LIIV Sandbox and to scatter themselves, not necessarily be all in the one place. And so I think things like the Pantheon could make the Sivir's life very, very difficult, even if she does have the spell shield poise stun.
My big boon for T1 in that kind of regard is that they have way better skirmishing, because their jungler has just guaranteed setup CC, the same way that Vi does, but can use it very effectively to turn fights, because he can, of course, ult in, then stun somebody, then put up his shield, block a lot of damage, and then help turn a skirmish with Azir then rotating in, getting an Emperor's Divide. And if the Zeri or the Azir get fed early because LIIV Sandbox are trying to force a fight, as they often do, to a fault, then I think there's a lot of defensive options in the Pantheon and the Azir that allow T1 to actually potentially have an early Zeri moment, let's just say, and then run away with the game. So I don't think the fights will necessarily be even, and taking fights on LIIV Sandbox's terms is something that they've found so much success with, but it might actually be ill-advised this time around, especially around, you know, the first few objectives and trying to steal away blue buff and stuff like that.
The thing that I'm going to find, like, that I'm going to be very interested in, as fans craning their necks to get into the shot, which is very, very cute. The thing that I'm really interested in is whether we're going to see the trade, because I think that T1 probably want to fight a little bit early with the fact that they have a lot of lane control, you could say. Even the Sejuani is able to lane quite effectively there towards the top side. Gragas is not necessarily going to be the biggest of a hindrance, plus it's Zeus versus Dove, which is largely the reason.
Yeah, Lulu, Zeri bottom, and you've got the Azir mid.
Yeah. Faker on that Azir is certainly going to have a lot of push. So being able to play around Owner with all of that extra aggression, they might be able to threaten for both of those objectives. And we haven't actually seen that happen yet, as, wow, that was the immediate sit-down of, oh no, I'm in the shot, I'm ruining everything.
Yeah, I think that it is so hard to pull that off right now. But if you have the extra power that Pantheon has early, and everybody's grouped up and Faker has the level 6 advantage, maybe you win that Drake fight, then just go straight top. And also LIIV Sandbox, again, it is, we have to keep mentioning this because it is so true that it's almost sad, as they will fight even if it doesn't make sense, even if they're not grouped up, even if their composition hasn't added its biggest strength at that moment. So yeah, there is definitely a world I could see where T1 force a Drake fight, win it, then just go straight to Herald and end up getting both. We'll have to wait and see what happens in reality, as we'll see if Faker gets POG tonight. Also, Spell Shield versus Pantheon should be insanely high value for the Sivir. Let's see how that one also ends up panning out, because it's very difficult to kill the 80 carry.
I don't understand the piglets, Wolf.
Yeah, I'm trying to... She keeps shaking it. I saw Ambition's name.
Interesting.
I don't know what else was going on.
Oh, that's the Sandbox CEO.
Oh, he's hiding out.
Wow. Very, very cool.
And if he's here, they've got a buff.
Yeah, well, maybe. You never know, because maybe it's adding extra pressure. You know, you've got the athlete in the audience on the T1 side, and we were asking who LIIV Sandbox brought. Well, they brought a famous YouTuber as well. It's Dottie, and their CEO. So I guess, you know, they're doing their best to try and one-up. There's also a crab rave happening and a dab happening towards the back as well. So there's a lot going on.
Yeah.
Apparently, the YouTuber is a Minecraft god.
Yeah, he's very famous. And is, I believe, a Sandbox creator as well, if I'm not mistaken. So for those of you guys who don't know, Sandbox is a massive company that does content creation out here, helps manage YouTube channels and stuff like that. So they are a very big company in entertainment. And, of course, LIIV, their title sponsor, is a bank. We've talked about this before, but people do ask me a lot, why are they called Sandbox? That's why.
Mm-hmm. Would you say that it's somewhat similar to Afrika and what they sort of did, or is it less streaming platform, more videos? I
guess, yeah, it's more videos, but they also do live streaming and stuff like that. Afrika, for those who do not know, is also a massive streaming platform here in Korea, and they are sponsored by Kwangdong now, of course, as their title sponsor, which is a vitamin company.
Oh, cool. Apparently, Custogen just asked if he's going to give the players something special if they win today, and he apparently just said yes.
Nice.
So we'll have to stay tuned to the interview afterwards if they do manage to win somehow, as to whether or not they actually manage to get something special and what it is. Very interested. I think the likelihood of Sandbox winning is not above 50%, but we'll see how they're going to go, because I think we just want to get into the match, as I think we are getting very, very close towards loading in once again.
Yeah, I see people checking runes back there, so we know it's getting close, and
everyone has their correct champions as well, by the looks of things.
Now, I don't want to be a downer, but there is a chance that when we get into the game, it will have happened again, but considering that it's only happened once, basically, in the last 3 weeks, I think the chances are very slow, or very low, excuse me.
Yeah, I don't know whether you've jinxed it or because you've now, you know, acknowledged it, that maybe it's less likely to happen.
You could see that they are on the Rift and it is paused, so they're doing the final rune checks now.
Yeah. Just if it comes out of sepia mode, that's when we know that things are going to be all right. And it hasn't come out of sepia mode yet. And so that's not great. I think we're just making sure that we're checking completely is. Here we are. Let's have a look at these drafts again, Wolf.
Yep. So, Prince on the Sivir here. Dive composition, pick composition here for LIIV Sandbox. Tons of CC and engage. On the other side, skirmish heavy composition here for T1, where Zeri can get over walls, do a lot of damage early. They have the global in the Pantheon, and great ults here for engage as well.
Yep. Short, sweet, and to the point, Wolf. Let's get into game number 1. Well, as it turns out, there are more T1 fans in Lore Park at the moment. We are also on T1's side, I guess. I always do need to say the caveat.
Yeah.
Because they are just closer, and so it might just sound louder to me. But let's see whether T1 are going to be able to make this Pantheon work. For the first time in the jungle that we've seen on this patch, the only real change was the fact that the Q now does more damage to monsters. Yeah. But it's a pick that we've seen elsewhere, as well as, you know, in solo queue for a long time, that you can just pick up in the jungle. We did see it in support, I think.
Yeah, Keria played it, I believe. And we saw Pyke versus a Pantheon in the bottom lane of supports. So really cool tech that we saw there in the LCK. It's a very awesome pick, I think, for me, because it reminds me of the 2021. We saw the early parts where it was a lot of squishy AP jungles versus Pantheon, and we actually had like hard jungle counter picks back then, and Pantheon was one of those strong picks you could have to actually just 1v1 the jungle and take a bunch of camps away and start snowballing the game when you hit level 6. I don't think it'll be played quite like that this time around, as he is laning in, or jungling into the Vi from Croco here, our resident Vi expert. But yeah, I'm really excited as after post 6 where T1 decide to fight and what the priority is going to be, whether it's Herald priority or Drake priority for them, because like you said, this team fighting comp in skirmishing comp is so good in those parts, and if T1 win it decisively, they get such a lead, so it's worth trying, and they could just walk away from it if it doesn't work out or if they don't have the prio set up for it.
I'm interested in this ward, Wolf, because I think Faker might have been trying to get it into the Raptor pit.
Yeah.
Instead did not.
But now he knows if Croco is walking around through that little sliver right there.
Yeah, that's true. Which is often a gang path that you take on the red side, but could also be an unorthodox position to set up. So could have been intentional as well.
Joke's on him. He's just not going to take the Raptors at all, regardless.
Yeah, there you go.
Just going to go straight to red buff, path down to the bottom side.
Might have all just been mind games. Not entirely sure. I don't like to just first assume that a mistake has been made, because sometimes I just don't have a brain that big, you know?
Yeah, I think in this case he definitely wanted it to be in the Raptor camp. You know, I think your first instinct is correct, but you know, I did think of some alternate ways that this could be valuable and kind of came up empty. In terms of this laning phase here, the observers are showcasing that Faker took first strike and is trying to harass his way to an advantage. As Zayas up here.
He's just going to have a drink. He's going to walk it off. It'll be fine. As you can see, walking in a relatively straight line, so I think he's doing all right.
Owner's like, if at first my teammate can't get the job done, can't do anything right, I'll just do it myself.
Gets on over there, does manage to put that one down. It's been almost 2 years since we've seen the Pantheon jungle. It was Canyon, who was pretty good at that point in time.
Yeah, also versus the Mundo from Pyoshik, I'm like, yeah, that was not a fun time back then. I remember the Pyoshik Mundo, the first pick. I wonder if it was actually the first pick Mundo jungle game that happened last year. That was a crazy one. Either way, Pantheon much more powerful last year in a meta where diving was a lot more of a strong thing to do, and you could pick them as a counter pick to a lot of squishy junglers. And it wasn't durability patch, so Pantheon a little bit weaker in actually setting up for kills, obviously on just patch 12 in general in the second part.
Yep. Here as well, I mean, this, I believe, is the same matchup that Faker played into BDD in game number 3 against Nongshim. And Faker destroyed BDD in that game number 3. It was not even close. It was a large reason why T1 won. I think it had been a while since we'd seen the full Faker 1v9, but I think he did it in both of their wins against Nongshim. He was very good. May have just cast a cursed him though, as Vault Breaker is going to come through. Croco with a fair bit of damage here, but hasn't flashed yet, and Croco's just not going to look for more.
Yep.
It's going to push him away.
Faker doesn't care because he was planning on backing soon anyways, because he has no mana. Closer will get a little bit of extra power here in this lane and is going to hold this wave. So trying to get the maximum value out of this tiny little lead the gank will offer, but it's not going to lead to too much.
Nope.
So no caster curse to be found, no flashes exchanged.
Thank goodness. I'm safe for now. As Kyle's moving in as well. All right, well, they didn't get the flash last time, but now if they do some damage to Faker, it's going to be much more annoying to have to go back. As this wave pushing towards Closer, and Faker will have to walk out and start trying to pick up these minions in relatively dangerous territory.
He's setting up a shuffle just in case. He definitely knows there's a pretty good chance that with Sivir gone here that Nautilus is rotated over, puts the soldier down so he can shuffle back towards his turret. Pre-6 at level 5, he is at his most vulnerable in these types of scenarios where he cannot self-peel and would have to flash.
Yeah, really smart play from Faker.
And, you know, he went Dematerializer here. I think he's knowing exactly what he's getting himself into in terms of this laning phase. Now here comes Owner.
Yeah, just escorting Carrier back to the lane. The googly eyes of this skin always make me very happy.
And Pantheon versus early Drakes here, I think it's not enough setup here. I like the idea of trying to look for an early Drake, but unfortunately Closer has Plyo, has 6, Croco's nearby. He does not have control of the bottom side, so he won't be able to get anything done. We'll just go over and take his Gromp. Has an early pickaxe, so a lot of damage on this Pantheon, but won't unfortunately amount to anything here just yet. Yep. As, you know, I was hoping maybe we'd see some sort of really cool early Drake attempt here from T1, but even they don't have a way to break the rules of the game with this new additional hit points Drakes have.
Yeah, it is more difficult to lock it down. Not going to be an Infernal Soul either. We actually had back-to-back Infernal Souls in our previous series, and so the Rift is going to give us something new. We'll be able to talk about another one of these upgraded dragons as that one does come in, but we're not entirely sure what that's going to be. It's just not going to be an Infernal.
Yeah.
That's all the information I have for you.
And I can tell everyone, of course, the solo Infernal Elemental will be a little bit more damage.
Hey, that's true.
For the Zeri, for the Azir in particular, will be quite massive. And
might help mitigate the Sivir nerf as well, perhaps.
Owner is just so smart in terms of what he's doing pathing-wise here. Comes down to the bottom side, paths over there a little bit towards Drake. Then, you know, just going to go straight back to the top side where he can both threaten Dove here potentially as all
right, well, Dove was looking for it, looking for the possible angle, as both of the teleports are down there towards the top side. So if Zeus did spend a bit of extra time underneath the turret, it could have been very detrimental.
But Owner he's not going to back until he has enough for his whip here, and he hits level 6. So he can actually ult in if there is a skirmish here or on Herald spawn. So comes over here, finds that final bit of experience to hit level 6, gets it a little bit faster than Croco, and now can just ult back in if T1 wants to start this one up. No Zeri coming over here too. Prince may just look for a plate trade, but that's much harder to actually get value from with the local gold now on Herald.
Well, now we've got, 4 members rotating up. If Prince can also get a lot here, but Croco's going to go for the engage. Zeus taking the brunt of the damage here as the Sultan Battery comes down. That's first blood going over to the Orbit Deception from the Ahri, as Zeus also is burning down. But Gumayusi, he's made it into the fight. Can he actually pop off? Finds the ult. Dove body slams to get himself away. Dredge line is fantastic, and Vault Breaker is going to be there. LIIV Sandbox are going to be able to get out, although Gumayusi is still going very far forward. Faker's now underneath the turret. The stun comes through, and Kale has the shield. Oh dear, this is a lot of aggression, Wolf.
Sivir picks up a plate bottom side here and is timid about getting a second one, knowing that Owner has respawned, does have his Starfall back available. Oh, I say back available, he didn't use it in the last fight, so this is going to be a lot of minions deleted down here, but Prince doesn't actually overstay his welcome or look for more. And looks like Owner is just going to go over here and try to start up this Drake as T1 push in mid Plyo, trying to have control on both sides of the map. This is the power of Pantheon is he can take this scuttle away, threaten the Sivir, but also help protect his team with that mid push. But T1 will need to be more decisive about whether they're going to start an objective up or not, because now LIIV SANDBOX are grouped to fight.
Yeah, Prince also able to move on over here as Gumayusi. That plate, I believe, is just going to go into the nether. No, actually doesn't actually get taken down. So Prince has the opportunity to possibly get that money. 500 gold, the lead here for LIIV SANDBOX. So we're still waiting for one of these neutral objectives to be taken.
Yeah, Faker is unfortunately the biggest loser of this exchange. Loses his flash and also sacrificed a lot of CS because so much CS was lost in the bottom lane. Guma took the mid farm because he needs to actually stay on parity with this Sivir to be a carry later on. But notice the difference in terms of farm between Closer and Faker now. He's almost 20 CS up. And this is because Faker spent a lot of time down there in the mid lane. And this fight, not very clean here from T1. Faker has Emperor's Divide, uses it defensively at the last second, but it's too late to actually save Owner. Doesn't get any value, unfortunately, in a skirmish like this out of his ultimate. I think if they had cut LIIV SANDBOX in half and Guma was there on the front lines, maybe they would have gotten a pick early. But as it is, just very late, and Faker wants to salvage the play. Looks for a flash here, but again, doesn't have Emperor's Divide. Yeah, looks for a shuffle, has to flash, doesn't have Emperor's Divide, so no kills going over. Prince gets a plate bottom side, now he's got 2. And T1 significantly behind in this early game now.
Yeah, they have fallen behind. It's like 500 gold or something like that, but the way LIIV SANDBOX are playing, and remember, this is LIIV SANDBOX. They're not a team that gets leads in the early game. That is just not their thing. They've had a lead for the majority of the time, as T1 do finally eclipse them by just a few hundred gold. But still, this is definitely good news if you're a LIIV SANDBOX fan, because this is not a position that they usually find themselves in. But that first objective fight is going to be the really important one.
Yeah, and we still haven't had either the first Herald nor the first Drake taken by either of these teams. LIIV SANDBOX grouped up here for that said Herald. Sivir coming up here. Prince does have his ultimate and Ghost available here.
Yeah.
Round done for Faker, and this fight is going to be such a pivotal one.
Well, Zeus, he's booking it, running real fast towards this fight now as the Orbit Deception does a little bit of damage. It looks like Owner won't be able to get over here. He's slowed down. There's the cast. Dredgeline doesn't quite hit the mark, as now they're going to try and go in onto the Pantheon, who takes so much damage. He's been tanking forever, though. The Vi is going to be traded. Zeus now just walking it out as Prince is on the wrong side of the fight. The Charm picks up Gumayusi, though. The hook is going to land, but the Emperor's Divide is just amazing. Not enough to save Gumayusi, and now Closer is looking to clean this one up. Prince is going to grab it with the Boomerang Blade, and LIIV SANDBOX win another fight.
LIIV SANDBOX win a fight, grab Herald. Unfortunately, Dove is the one who holds the eye, so they can't drop it down here just now. Looks like they're going to back off and go bottom side, so basically forcing the lane swap here, then actually turning it on its head by going bottom side. Actually really smartly played by LIIV SANDBOX, as the Herald's in the Gragas' hands right now. But this fight here for LIIV SANDBOX is so slow and measured. When they see the ult coming out from Sejuani, they're like, okay, well, now we can turn on this fight. Owner absorbs all of the peel here. And unfortunately, this is not enough damage. Faker finally comes over, has Emperor's Divide, but it's not going to be high value here, as unfortunately Guma is just out of the fight. You can see the Herald is actually just straight up dropped mid.
And Closer benefiting from that Herald, I'm right there with them, because he's been playing absolutely amazingly so far this game. 3-0-1 on this Ahri, and holds the Charm.
Yes.
Like he read Gumayusi like a book.
He read him so well, and also they gave Prince the kill in that last part of the exchange. So, you know, give him a little bit back in the mid lane. So plate gold in bottom and in mid. A fed Ahri, a Sivir who's ahead. T1 really biting off more than they could chew in that last fight. And once again, this Pantheon pick not working out just yet for T1. Its biggest strength at this stage in the game is its survivability and its ability to turn fights with its ultimate. Like the Pantheon, just genderlessly calling Pantheon his ultimate. And the Starfall can turn a fight, but if you're just walking in as Pantheon, why'd you pick this one, you know? And he absorbs the wild growth so that Guma can't.
Well, he's going to dive on top of this Gragas, but Closer's over here. The Everfrost is fantastic. Cast is just going to pick off Zeus, and Croco will get in here. Sultan Battery doesn't really care about your Emperor's Divide, as Faker is just going to blast cone his way out. That's 6-2 now in kills, Wolf. LIIV SANDBOX is smashing this early game.
And Faker, once again, tries to save with the Emperor's Divide, but unable to do so. Look at the plate gold here. Significant lead for LIIV SANDBOX. Now, some plates picked up in mid and top, but when you think about where the money is, especially with the Sejuani picking up plates, who really cares about that? And that was the one place T1 had the gold advantage. We were talking about their gold lead earlier was like 100 or 200. It was a Sejuani CS, which is so insignificant here, but the Vi is accelerated. The Ahri, if she wishes she built Darksteel now, Closer's like, man, think of the value. But he's got an early Everfrost here, has stopwatch, and they're looking to fight a second objective here ASAP.
Yeah, Charm isn't going to hit the mark, but the Everfrost is. Hook connects as well, but Kale is going to have to get out of here. Faker diving forward. There's the re-engage, actually. Vault Breaker comes in. Orbit Deception is good, but the Boomerang not quite long enough range. That will mean the LIIV SANDBOX should be able to take this turret. Yeah, exactly right. Prince going to rotate over. Faker gets back towards the turret there, but isn't going to be able to save it. Can put up a Sun Disc if he would like to.
And Zeus is going to be the one who benefits most from this, but again, he's playing Sejuani, so it's not that significant. And LIIV SANDBOX here happy to say, yeah, well, you hit a turret a few more times here, you have demolished, but whatever. It's a 200 lead for 220 gold lead for Zeus here, and the rest of the map is blown wide open. First turret blood goes over in the mid lane to LIIV SANDBOX, and they're going to pick up the second turret there in the bottom side in just a moment. And going back to the skirmish, looks good here. When you have the Pantheon, you have that setup CC, but Dove is just so incredibly tanky. He has his task to disengage and still had flash, so you're forced to fight here with the insane turn that LIIV SANDBOX have. You don't know where the Ahri is, but you better be guessing that he's on his way up. Closer comes over here, picks up some additional money, and there's that second turret I was talking about. LIIV SANDBOX in full control of this game right now.
Absolutely. And so much of it is off the back of Dove. Just being able to outplay these scenarios. He's so unassuming in how he does it as well. He's like, oh, I've been caught out of position. Here, allow me to land the perfect cask to guarantee a pick for my team. It doesn't look like it's going to work, but when it does, I mean, it's just really good. It's a very strange situation. Dove is just a very interesting player, and he confuses and enthralls me. Wolf.
It's like he's a taunt. He's a bait. Like you feel like he's out of position. You feel like, oh, okay, this is the angle, but he just turns it around. And on champions like the Gragas, you know, like the Gnar and the Ornn, it's just so easy for him to do this. Croco.
Well, they're going to take Croco on a bit of a journey here. He flashes, but the Emperor's Divide still lands. Vault Breaker is going to get him to relative safety, but I don't think Croco's going to be doing that again. That was Emperor's Divide traded for Flash, Assault and Battery, and most of Croco's health bar.
Yeah, I think Owner was definitely considering ulting for the chase here as well, but doesn't have enough vision, isn't going to go for it. Still does lead to a lot of early turret damage, so I think the idea is good here for LIIV SANDBOX, but maybe hold the ultimate until after the shuffle comes through from Faker, because once you lock onto a target, you will end up where the target does, and so as a result, Faker nearly takes the Vi out there. Gets a flash, but it is going to be nearly that top turret going down, so almost all outers here for LIIV SANDBOX in the early parts. The dive could have been more successful if the timing was a little bit better. So good in theory here, and Closer's just going to look to push one more wave through. 2 levels up on Faker here. Faker is ultless. I mean, he cannot side lane against this Ahri freely. It's going to actually need backup.
And now Closer is looking towards potentially a Shadow Flame as item number 2. Often we see Zhonya's in that position, but he hasn't had to use stopwatch, so I actually really like trying to push your damage even further forward. You're also against the Shifting Sands as well, which is, you know, some extra shielding, things like that. Carrier wants to add a few shields. I do quite like the idea of going for an earlier Shadow Flame.
He could also just be going for really fast Horizon focus as well and boosting his damage. I think it will be the Shadow Flame, but I mean, you're this far ahead. You kind of get your pick of the litter. 300 more gold into his pocket here. And obviously the Horizon focus is going to be way better against the Pantheon and the Sejuani, but not as good against the Zeri.
Well, we're looking for a bit of a flank play here as the Assault and Battery comes down, and LIIV SANDBOX say, don't mind if I do. The Glacial Prison leaves a bit to be desired as Croco picks up the kill on the Sejuani, and now Carrier completely out of position. They are going to be able to lock that one down very comfortably as Closer is on the chase, looking to lock down his former teammates here, but they'll settle for a Dragon.
That's going to be a 2 Drake lead here, and we'll find out what the soul is going to be. Would be a nightmare scenario, I think, for T1 here if it is Hextech or Mountain, and the chances of either are quite high. So I mean, with a 2 Drake deficit here and your comp trying to scale up right now as T1, you're hoping it's going to be a Drake that's less impactful despite the elemental buffs. It is Horizon focused, by the way, second gear for Closer.
Went for it.
And like I was saying before that fight broke out, great at stopping the tanks from actually being impactful. Burning down these tanks is something that a lot of AP mages who pick Leandries could do. Leandries on Azir, for example. But as Ahri, if you get a fast Horizon focus, which, by the way, you should never be able to have this early in the game. It should not be allowed. But look at how fast Zeus even dies with the chain CC here. With Ahri having Horizon focus, he dies even faster. Everfrost still going to be high value, so you don't sacrifice that utility with the Everfrost, but you do add a little bit of front-to-back damage here. And that's how LIIV SANDBOX has been winning these fights, is just killing Owner and Zeus over and over again. That last fight was very reminiscent of the Nongshim series. Zeus out of position, caught. Curry is trying to babysit. He dies as well. It's not even his fault. And getting flashbacks here, Atlas.
Yeah, exactly. The flashbacks are the big problem, right? As now we've got T1 setting up a bit of a gank rush. LIIV SANDBOX just not really going to give them the time of day. Dove going to get slowed down. Doesn't really seem too bothered by the whole situation. As LIIV SANDBOX is sieging this inner turret towards the top side of the map, and T1 don't really have too much of an answer right now. It's 4 minutes. And then we'll have our first Hextech Drake. Hextech Soul going to be a very interesting one to look at as Faker here towards the bottom side. But Dove's going to turn up. The stalwart protector of LIIV SANDBOX's stuff so far this game.
Look at the itemization across the board here for LIIV SANDBOX too. We've already talked about the Horizon focus a lot, so we'll leave that one out. But Chem Tank for Dove makes him very tanky in general, but also allows him to play the part of an engage top laner. He can chase at somebody, he can look for body slams, so he's multifaceted here. Is, of course, building now into a little bit more armor, so he's more survivable for the Zeri, who's going to be chipping away at him, the Pantheon, and the front lines. Then you have Vi just going straight into magic resistance here on her second item. Force of Nature completed already. This is insane.
Yeah.
Like, the more I look at these items, the more I'm like, this is doomed, T1. I don't know if there's a way back in, because Void Staff's being built here from Faker, but he sacrifices a lot with that since he already did have to go for this crown build. So he's not going to be a big damage threat in these fights. He's really just an ult button for a long time 1,600 gold behind T1. This is not the start to this series you were looking for.
No. They are on the red side. This has been a side that they've been struggling on as far as finding victories are concerned. So LIIV SANDBOX still the 2-0 is not looking like it's in the bag just yet, but game number 1 certainly is getting closer and closer to that. Closer, he's going to head back home. 3-0-4 against his former team. Oh man, it must feel absolutely amazing to have this kind of indication for Closer, especially on his Ahri.
And Closer is a master of these type of assassin champions. He's great at Ahri, right? He's great at LeBlanc. You know, Aurelia is what he was arguably most famous for, but he's played a lot of Zoe in the past too. You put him on the Ahri, you put him on the Sylas, and that's his comfort zone. And it feels like he's finally been unlocked at the last part of the season. He was a consistent / middling player for this team. It was all about Prince. But I think he's really come into his own in the second half of Round Robin 2 here, where he's like, yeah, Ahri is actually legit now. Sylas is really busted, and I can play champions that I like and not what's just good for the meta. What I like is good for the meta, and he looks way, 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 way more comfortable as a result.
Yeah, I mean, he just benefits directly from agency. We've had this conversation. If he has mobility and agency as far as getting these flanks and actually making a difference, then Closer looks absolutely amazing. You put him on a control mage, not exactly the same story, but this is exactly the same carry duo that we saw Gen G just with. And they flubbed some team fights, and then the comp still looked real good as Croco going to steal away a red buff, just being frustrating here in the enemy jungle. And LIIV SANDBOX, I think, can just go and do Baron if they would want to.
I think so.
They're not wanting to take the risk right now, wanting to catch someone out beforehand.
I think taking these fights sooner than later is definitely optimal.
Well, Croco's just going to try and walk past the Sejuani's taking so much damage, though. The depth charge just bought so much space as Closer takes down yet another kill. Owner dies as basically an afterthought as Gumayusi is ulted, but I just don't see an angle that he can actually stand and do damage. They've already taken out the jungler and the frontline tank. LIIV SANDBOX will be able to take Baron.
Yeah, it looks like T1 might get a Constellation bounty turret here in mid as LIIV SANDBOX have full control. I mean, if you try to force this fight, T1, I do not think you are going to like the result. As look at where Guma is. He's trying to find a way, trying to find an angle to get Gromps, or rather Krugs, on the blue side here. He's just so starved for money, it's not safe.
Yeah.
To be in the mid lane with the rest of the team on Baron. T1 are so far behind this game, and that's why I was saying they should force a fight. LIIV SANDBOX should force a fight sooner than later, because the Zeri is an item behind right now, is so desperately trying to get her IE where she can actually be relevant in neutral fights with her poke. Just not the case in these fights. And Zeus, once again, the front line is just deleted. They're so far behind. Horizon Focus is going to give so much extra damage onto Owner here as well. And it's, once again, the tanks who die first, and Guma isn't online yet, so can't use the power of the front to back, whereas tanks do his job for the Zeri damage. And Wild Growth has to be used repeatedly on Zeus or Owner, so Gumayusi isn't survivable. Now has his IE, but unfortunately Baron's already taken.
Yeah, and Prince already has his IE too. And the Sivir right now is doing so much more damage. The just the luxury Last Whisper hanging out on top of it as well, 2-0 and 5. And we mentioned that Prince played well when he was back at home. Well, it looks like here at LoL Park, Prince is also pretty good, as it turns out. And they are now 7,000 gold in the lead. But I still, man, I'm trying to come to terms with how good Closer is playing after seeing him have a really rough time earlier on, as Kyle is probably going to die. There's the explosive cask. He doesn't use the stopwatch, as this Drake is going to get taken down. That is sole point. But now Croco's going to have to get out of here. Dove, I don't think is going to survive this one, as the Grand Skyfall does come through, or the Grand Starfall, as it is now called. And that is 2 kills for T1 to answer back.
I was worried that Owner's R key on his keyboard was broken for a little while, but we do have now evidence that it is working.
Indeed.
that was the first time he's actually used the ultimate to success here in this game, and it's to chase down and punish. Now Kyle here, deep clearing vision. Dove is here to help save him, is the idea. But he's caught by Emperor's Divide. Dove was like, oh man, my only hope here was the cask would save you, so that we could actually guarantee Drake. They basically wanted to shut the door on T1. Unfortunately, not only does he die, but then Dove's cask isn't successful, and it's Hextech Rift, so the portal allows them to chase down. Starfall comes through.
Yep. It was a fantastic little flank play with the portal there from Faker, and they'll be rewarded with a further turret. Also, the bounties are still up, so they bring it within 5,000 gold to T1. But control of the map still well and truly there for LIIV SANDBOX. That was, in fact, T1's first turret of the game.
Yeah, and I don't want to get excited about T1 picking up bounty gold or
you can if you want to. It's not KT.
But in seriousness, I don't want to lie to you guys and give any false hope about T1 with these picks, because they still lose the critical objective. Yes, they pick up a little bit of extra money around across the board with that bounty. But the problems they have to solve, the Sivir and the Ahri, and the Gragas, who still exists, even though he was killed, he's 1, 2, and 7, these problems aren't solved by that. They still will have to win a team fight, and those are the only kills they've gotten in so long this game, and it wasn't fair. There were 2 staggered kills on LIIV SANDBOX who were slightly overextended. But where's the front-to-back team fight here? We're going to have to see that before we can believe T1 has a chance.
Well, Glacial Prison does connect. There's a great Everfrost. The follow-up's beautiful as well. Look at the bouncy castle from LIIV SANDBOX. The Piggy was not having a great time, as now Closer is dashing forward. Looks for Carrier. Actually, looks for Gumayusi. Doesn't find him there with the charm. And LIIV SANDBOX, they'll settle for the inner turret for now. But these fights, every time one little bit of CC lands, it's the entire house.
And Zeus has, Frostfire Gauntlet, he has the Frozen Heart, but he does not have a whole lot of magic resistance, and he doesn't have any tenacity because he went for Lucidity Boots. And when he gets caught in these moments, just watch how quickly he falls. He's level 13. Everfrost comes through, Nautilus Hook, Nautilus Ult, Cast. Doesn't matter if he has Wild Growth. They can just use all of their tools to kill him, because without a frontline, T1's composition cannot function. Knows the second he's dead, Closer's like, I'm killing whoever is in my charm range. And he dashes forward, he darts into the team fight. T1 can't fight without Zeus, but if Zeus is caught, he's dead. And then they can't fight without him because he's gone. So it's a lose-lose situation, right? Like, Zeus has to tank, but he needs to be tanking a little bit more carefully. And I think as T1, you have to be willing to just hope for the late game now and stop trying to defend these turrets, because it's a lose-lose game at this point.
And also, how are you supposed to, go in for the engage if Zeus goes in? Because if your tank is getting hit by Prince, and Prince is just ricocheting all this damage, and if Faker and Gumayusi are standing next to the Sejuani, they just take half of their health bar in a matter of seconds. It's really, really hard to navigate how this fight is supposed to look for T1, but They've experimented with this, let's try and hit some CC and hope that we can lock down a target, and it hasn't worked out. We need to see something else.
Yeah.
As Prince was backing on a ward. He is going to be able to spell shield the ulti, though.
There have been an increasing number of Sejuani ultimates shot at Sivers who have spell shield available this past few weeks of LCK.
Yeah.
Usually don't like to see that. Hey, he's got it upgraded once, not the longest cooldown ever.
Well, Croco's decided that he's going to go for the fight. He manages to get into the back line onto Gumayusi, who's trying to get out of there, and immediately Closer is polymorphed as the hook connects! What the heck was that, Kyle? That is going to seal the deal on this team fight. Faker's going to get flashed on. It's a double kill for Prince, and LIIV SANDBOX are done. They want to finish this game right here, right now.
Like we said, this is the most LIIV SANDBOX comp that they have ever been allowed to get. T1 let them draft this. They let them have it, and yeah, there are some really good parts of T1's comp. They are very good at scaling. They have some good skirmishing power, but they never got to show it. They never got to use it. They fell behind to Closer early, and it's lights out.
Yeah, these Nexus turrets going to be next on the menu as that charm onto Zeus is going to spell his end, at least after this stopwatch does go down. Immediately, 2 kills come through. This last Nexus turret will go down, and LIIV SANDBOX, they are 1 game away from taking down T1 like not many other teams have been able to do this year and even this season. First Nexus is going to hit the deck.
I think we'll see a pretty big swing in some of those goal difference average